So what if you just woke up tomorrow and political parties were completely banned?
Oh man, just completely gone.
Yeah, I mean, no flags waving from telephone poles, no election symbols painted on the walls in your neighborhood, none of those massive, noisy rallies blocking traffic.
Right, right.
Just pure, unadulterated meritocracy.
It is a really jarring image, honestly, because, we're just so accustomed to the whole theater of politics. We instinctively associate governance with ideology, with picking a side,
Exactly.
and, well, with generalist politicians who are essentially just professional campaigners.
Yeah, and that theater is exactly what the source material we are looking at today wants to just entirely tear down. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be diving in.
Our mission today is to explore this really radical, comprehensive blueprint for something called a partyless meritocratic governance model.
Hmm.
And the core argument in these documents for you listening is that our current systems are inherently flawed by, well, party allegiances and nepotism.
Oh, heavily flawed.
Right. So the proposed solution here is to restructure everything, from the top-tier national departments all the way down to your local neighborhood ward, and put strict domain experts in charge of absolutely all of it.
Yeah, it's an absolute sweeping of the board. I mean, it completely reimagines how we define a leader, how a leader actually governs,
Right.
and crucially, how you, the citizen, hold them accountable without that safety net or the barrier, really, of a political party.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how this impacts your daily life and, local development, we have to look at the structural overhaul at the very top.
Right, the big picture.
Yeah, like if you remove the politicians, who is actually running the government? This blueprint completely replaces the traditional cabinet with an expert council.
Correct. The government is divided into 12 very specialized clusters or departments. And the mandate is incredibly strict. Like, you cannot lead a department unless you possess high-level academic and practical expertise in that specific field.
So we are essentially talking about firing a whole team of charismatic general managers and replacing them with a highly specialized board of scientists and practitioners.
Basically, yes.
Like, for example, the Home and Internal Security Department, which handles the police force and disaster management. Under this new system, that department has to be led by someone with a PhD or vast, verifiable experience in criminology or law.
Exactly. And that logic extends universally. So the Health and Family Welfare Department must be led by medical doctors or medical science experts.
Makes sense.
Agriculture and food security is handed over to agricultural scientists. Energy is run by energy scientists, finance by economists, and so on.
Oh, and there is also a specific local self-government department designed to coordinate rural and urban municipalities, which must be led by experts in practical rural development.
Yes, which is huge for the grassroots stuff.
We'll totally get into that grassroots level later because it's fascinating, but first I want to talk about the leadership structure. The blueprint abolishes the traditional role of a chief minister or a prime minister entirely.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the psychological shift this demands from the electorate. I mean, we are so conditioned to look for a single figurehead, right?
Like a captain of the ship.
Exactly, a captain to project strength and vision. But the system argues that placing a single generalist at the top, dictating terms to a room full of experts, well, it creates an unnecessary bottleneck based on ego rather than data.
So instead of a prime minister, you have a chief coordinator.
Yeah.
And this coordinator holds, no dictatorial power at all.
None. They don't have veto power over the scientists.
Right. They exist purely to coordinate these 12 equally powerful department heads. But I have to push back a little here.
Sure, go for it.
Does this risk turning a democracy into this cold, sterile technocracy? Like, if you only have engineers and economists running things, does empathy get lost to pure data optimization? Do we all just become numbers on a spreadsheet?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the philosophy embedded in our source material argues that we've fundamentally misunderstood what empathy in governance actually is.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the current system offers performative empathy. A charismatic politician visits a disaster zone, offers generic sympathies, maybe promises some funds.
Right, the photo op.
Exactly. But true empathy, according to this meritocratic model, is efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah, real empathy is having an energy scientist in charge who actually understands the load balancing required to fix the power grid so you don't freeze in your home to begin with.
Oh, I see.
It's having an agricultural scientist who can diagnose and solve a crop blight rather than a generalist politician who simply subsidizes the failure after the farmers have already lost their livelihoods.
Wow, empathy as competence. That is a
Yeah.
really compelling way to frame it. But that leads us directly into a massive logistical hurdle.
The vetting.
Yeah, if we require absolute experts to run these 12 clusters and we've banned political parties, how do we actually find them? There are
Yeah.
no party tickets to hand out. There is no massive campaign machine to recruit and vet these people.
Right. Well, this is where the blueprint introduces a highly scientific, multi-tiered vetting process. It completely discards the traditional campaign trail in favor of what is essentially a rigorous open source gauntlet.
A gauntlet to just filter out everyone except the most qualified individuals.
Precisely.
Let's walk through how someone even gets on a ballot. First, the baseline qualifications are incredibly rigid. Zero criminal background.
And in this system, they don't just take a candidate's sworn affidavit,
Right.
It is instantly verified via integrated digital police databases.
Wow, okay. And you have to be between 25 and 55 years old, right?
Yes, and the educational requirements scale up depending on the jurisdiction.
How does that work?
Well, to even run at the local neighborhood or ward level, candidates need a high school equivalent, what the source refers to as a +2 qualification or a degree.
Okay, pretty standard.
But if you want to run at the national level, degrees are mandatory. And to lead one of those 12 major national departments, you absolutely need a PhD or extensively proven domain experience.
But, I mean, having a degree doesn't automatically make you a good leader.
No, which is why the degree just buys you the right to take the entrance exam.
Ah, an exam.
Yeah, there are no restrictions on the number of people who can apply, provided they meet that baseline. They take an open entrance exam conducted by a completely independent commission.
Supervised by the Supreme Court and top academic experts. Right?
Exactly. And this exam generates a main list of the top 20 scorers, alongside a waiting list.
That is wild. You literally have to test into the right to run for office. But the written exam isn't even the most intense part. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The VR stuff.
Yes, because how do you test if a brilliant academic can actually handle the stress of governance? The blueprint mandates high-tech vetting for those top 20 candidates, utilizing artificial intelligence and virtual reality simulations.
It's incredible. The AI and VR are used to artificially generate localized and national crises.
Like what kind of crises?
Oh, floods, public health emergencies, supply chain collapses. The system evaluates their real-time decision-making skills, their ability to triage resources, and just generally their crisis management under simulated pressure.
It's essentially a flight simulator, but for running a government. I'm just trying to imagine a current local politician putting on a VR headset, and the AI throws a simulated sudden public health crisis at them.
Right, and the AI tracks everything, how quickly they allocate emergency services, whether they panic, all of it.
That is wild.
And immediately following that simulation, the vetting process pivots from the technical to the psychological. Candidates undergo rigorous evaluations by a medical board of expert psychiatrists.
To test for what, exactly?
Mental maturity, administrative capability, and, very importantly, resilience to power.
Oh, I like that.
The system is explicitly designed to weed out narcissistic traits or psychological instability that could be disastrous in a public servant.
And if they fail?
If a candidate fails this psychological stress test, they are immediately disqualified, and the next person on the waiting list is brought up.
So for you listening, just picture this. The person asking for your vote in your local neighborhood has successfully passed a background check, a Supreme Court-monitored entrance exam, an AI crisis simulation, and a psychiatric evaluation.
The standard is just wildly different.
But they still have to convince you to vote for them. How do they campaign without parties or big money?
Well, the candidates who survive the vetting, perhaps 3 to 4 people for a local ward seat, they must engage in direct grassroots contact.
So no massive rallies.
No. The massive rallies, the loudspeakers, the deep-pocketed donors buying television airtime, all of that is strictly forbidden. Instead, candidates distribute what the source calls vote request notes.
And these notes are not just glossy flyers with a smiling photo and a vague slogan about hope or change, right?
Not at all. They are functionally contracts. The candidates must outline strict development projects and commit to exact timelines for when those projects will be completed.
I love that. And this contractual approach to campaigning naturally leads into how the voting itself is conducted. To eliminate all traditional avenues of voter fraud, proxy voting, ballot stuffing, voter intimidation, the system relies on a dual-layer authentication process at physical voting booths.
Yes. Physical booths, but using modern technology.
Right.
It maintains the traditional transparency of having people physically show up to vote, but it uses a biometric ID system. The source explicitly mentions scanning an Aadhaar-based chip, which is a national biometric identification framework.
So you scan your biological data to prove you are physically there, and then what?
Then you enter a one-time password, an OTP, sent directly to your registered mobile phone.
It's a fascinating solution. I mean, it requires physical presence, verified by biology, authenticated by an encrypted digital network.
It's designed to be structurally bulletproof.
But getting these brilliant, thoroughly vetted, biologically verified minds into office is only half the equation.
Precisely. The second half is accountability. How does the public actually hold these technocrats accountable once they have power?
Especially when there are no opposition parties to act as watchdogs.
Right.
So what does this all mean for the legislative process? Inside the assembly, there is no ruling party. There is no opposition party. Laws are debated and voted on purely based on their merit.
This is a profound shift in political mechanics. I mean, in our current systems, representatives frequently vote against their own conscience or against the best interests of their constituents simply because the party whip mandates it.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Here, representatives vote independently. But, and this is key, they aren't just voting based on their own expert opinions.
Right, there's a mechanism for real-time public polling. Before a major law passes, the public watches the debate live. And then, citizens vote via an official, secure app or website.
And the representative must vote according to the majority public opinion of their constituency.
They have no choice.
None. It layers a form of direct democracy right over the technocracy. The expert creates and debates the legislation, ensuring it's technically sound, but the public ultimately directs the vote.
The power given to the people doesn't stop at legislation either. The blueprint includes the right to reject and the right to recall.
Oh, these are big.
Yeah. The right to reject simply means that if you look at that final, highly vetted list of candidates and you don't believe any of them are suitable, the voters can reject the entire list and force a whole new vetting process.
But the right to recall is where the system truly flexes its accountability muscles.
Yeah, if an elected representative fails to meet those strict timelines they promised on that vote request note back during the campaign, or if they're caught engaging in corruption, the voters can fire them.
Just like that.
Yep. After a 2-year grace period, if 60% of voters in a constituency decide they are done, they can recall the representative digitally via OTP verification or by physically signing a document at the village office.
But, this raises an important question regarding stability. You have to wonder, if 60% of an electorate can fire their representative via a smartphone app, doesn't that risk constant chaotic instability?
That is exactly my thought. Like, if I am the water management expert and I mathematically have to raise local taxes to fix a collapsing water grid, the public is going to hate that.
Oh, they'll despise it.
Right. I'm going to get recalled and fired by the app before the new pipes are even ordered.
Which is precisely why the 2-year grace period is so critical to the blueprint's design. It acts as a carefully calibrated buffer.
To give them time to work.
Exactly. It gives these experts 24 uninterrupted months to implement difficult, perhaps initially unpopular policies and actually show tangible results. The public might hate the tax hike in month 3, but when they have clean, reliable water in month 18, the sentiment shifts.
That makes total sense. It balances the need for expert execution with ultimate public accountability. And for those who aren't tech savvy or, just don't use the app to vote on legislation or initiate a recall,
the system doesn't leave them behind.
No, it mandates monthly Grama Sabhas, which are traditional village assemblies, at the ward level. The representative physically has to show up, face the public, and directly seek their opinion. You can't just hide behind a screen.
Which perfectly brings us to how this entire system functions on the ground. Accountability at the top is crucial, but what happens when a citizen actually needs a local development project executed quickly?
Yes. Let's really zoom in here because this is where governance stops being abstract and starts touching our daily lives. The source material puts a massive emphasis on the 3 tiers of local self-government.
The panchayat system.
Exactly. For those unfamiliar with the terminology used in the blueprint, we're talking about briefly covering the panchayat, the block panchayat at the intermediate level, and the grama panchayat at the village level.
But the blueprint is highly focused on how development and activities happen specifically at the panchayat ward level. This is the absolute grassroots.
Right. I want to walk through how this expert-led, tech-driven system operates in the mud and dirt of real life. In our current standard system, if you live in a rural ward and you have acute issues, maybe you need a housing grant or the local poverty alleviation funds are stalled, you go to an office.
You fill out a form.
You hand it to a clerk, and it literally disappears into a black hole of bureaucracy for 6 months.
Yeah, and the friction in that current system is often caused by the principal agent problem. The politician who promised the well isn't the clerk processing the paper, who isn't the engineer digging the hole. Information and urgency just get lost every single step.
Right.
This meritocratic model aims to eradicate that bureaucratic friction entirely.
The mandate in the blueprint is direct field action. Representatives are strictly forbidden from sitting in air-conditioned offices. They're required to be physically present in the field among the people.
And the framework explicitly highlights several core focus areas for these ward-level experts. We're talking about tackling poverty, building housing, constructing toilets, digging wells, securing drinking water, providing agricultural support, and ensuring electricity access.
These are the bedrock necessities of local development.
Absolutely.
So let's map out the procedure. Under this system, if your ward urgently needs a well for drinking water, or an individual family submits an application for a toilet or a housing scheme, the local representative doesn't just sit there and read a file.
No, they travel directly to the specific site.
They assess the problem firsthand. And this is where the rapid processing comes in. Because other development applications and procedures, well, they're taken up incredibly quickly.
They gather all the necessary evidence and documents right on the spot.
Yes. They don't send the citizen back to a government office to fetch 3 different photocopies or a notary signature.
Exactly. They evaluate the living conditions, they verify the agricultural need or the lack of electricity, and they consider everything quickly and make the determination immediately.
And they implement it right away. They sign the files right there in front of the public.
On the street.
Yes. I find this visual so striking. The expert has verified the data, made the decision, and authorized the action in the street. Those signed files are then immediately handed over to the implementing officials. The blueprint claims this leads to incredibly fast execution of development projects.
And to ensure this rapid processing isn't just an illusion, and that the officials actually follow through on the signed files, the system utilizes total transparency through digital file tracking.
By digitizing the workflow, they eliminate the black hole. If you submit an application for agricultural support, you can log on to a portal and see exactly whose desk it is on.
Right, like the expert has signed the file, the materials are being ordered, the funds are being dispersed.
You are no longer relying on a politician's word. You are looking at the logistical metadata of your own development project.
And to close the loop on accountability at the panchayat and block panchayat levels, the system mandates comprehensive social auditing. Every 6 months, a progress report must be issued to the public detailing every approved project.
But it's not just a government auditor ticking boxes in a back room. Right?
No, it is a social audit with direct citizen participation. The community itself verifies that the housing was actually built, the electricity was properly connected, and the agricultural support actually reached the farmers who needed it.
It completely flips the dynamic. The government works out in the open, in the field, gathering evidence and making decisions on the spot, and the citizens literally hold the remote control.
It is an incredibly cohesive vision. By removing the friction of partisan politics, the tribalism, and all those bureaucratic layers, the system accelerates the actual physical mechanics of development.
So let's take a breath and synthesize the journey we just went on. We started by tearing down the circus tent, abolishing political parties, flags, and the noise of traditional campaigns.
Right.
We replaced generalist politicians with 12 highly specialized expert clusters, coordinated by a peer rather than dictated to by a single leader.
And we explored a grueling vetting process designed to test not just academic prowess, but real-time crisis management via AI simulations and psychological resilience via medical boards.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We looked at how campaigning shifts to binding contracts and voting requires both biometric and digital authentication to eliminate fraud.
And finally, we looked at how this radically changes power dynamics and local development. Lawmakers are tethered to live public polling apps. Citizens have the power to recall corrupt officials after a 2-year buffer.
Yep.
And grassroots panchayat ward development, whether it's housing, wells, or electricity, is executed rapidly in the field, signed in public, and tracked digitally.
It is a profound reimagining of the social contract. I mean, it treats the massive, sprawling apparatus of the state as an engineering problem that can be optimized?
It really is. It makes you look at our current system and wonder why we tolerate all the bureaucratic friction and the partisan gridlock. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering thought that wasn't covered in our source material, but seems like a massive implication.
Well, what's that?
Well, we've been looking at this entirely from a domestic perspective.
Hmm.
This blueprint presents a beautifully efficient, highly logical, strictly meritocratic state. But no country exists in a vacuum.
Very true.
I keep wondering what happens to global diplomacy.
That is a fascinating angle.
Right, because on the international stage, you have to interact with foreign leaders who are still very much products of the old system. They are passionate, ideological, messy, charismatic politicians who make decisions based on national pride, historical grievances, and domestic optics.
Yeah, totally different mindset.
So if a country adopts this partyless, strictly logical technocracy, its chief coordinator is essentially an optimization engine. How does a silent, logic-driven technocrat negotiate a complex geopolitical treaty or a border dispute with a foreign politician who is operating on pure emotional ideology and political theater?
Huh.
Does pure logic win at the negotiating table, or does the technocrat get outmaneuvered by the unpredictable human element of global politics?
It suggests that optimizing your own system might make you completely incompatible with the rest of the world.
Exactly. Something for you to mull over the next time you see an international summit on the news. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.